Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Last year, Gandalf saw the vet over a whole series of issues that could be related to food intolerance. And as a result, he spent a lot of the last few months of 2024 on a dietary elimination trial. An awful lot has happened since then. And so we're back today with our next update, telling you about what happened as we tried to get onto that next phase. I've already shared videos showing you why an elimination trial can be helpful, what it involves, and the issues we encountered with Gandalf that we were hoping to address with that trial. I put the links in the description if that's something you're interested in looking up, so please find those if you want to know more. I also shared an update about the changes we were seeing while we were on the restricted diet, and that's linked in the description as well. Once you've spent 8 or 12 weeks on your highly restricted diet to reset the body's response to any foods they might be intolerant of, it's time to start reintroducing foodstuffs that might trigger an intolerance to see whether they are risky or not. You don't have to do that, do you? No. The vet said that the idea is to reintroduce the foods one at a time and observe for a couple of weeks to see if there is any change in his condition. And so that was the plan. We would introduce protein sources one at a time because she also said it's typically the protein that causes the problem. And we would observe him for a couple of weeks before we introduced another one. So we could identify which of them was causing the problem. If we'd introduced everything again at once, we just know that something was the problem, but not which one. We just started doing this when it all went a bit pear shaped because Gandalf developed a really bad upset tummy. And without trying to be too graphic, we went from a small quantity of very nice firm poo to a flood of liquid yellow gloop. And the vet agreed that I should move him off the hyperallergenic diet immediately. And so I quickly moved him back onto things that we have previously used with success in the past with dogs that have had a bit of an upset tummy. Gandalf, come. Gandalf, what are you doing? If that's something you're interested in, then have a look for the link in the description to the video I made about Floppy's tummy troubles because we use quite a lot of those things in that video. I've learned it's best to keep a few things in hand, helpful supplies in stock for this sort of emergency. And that foresight came in very handy this time because the arrangement for providing supplies with the charity he's owned by is that it can only be ordered on a certain day of the week. And therefore, it can mean up to 10 days between thinking you might want it to actually getting it. This dog is obsessed with trying to sniff the camera. Will you please come away? Gandalf! Sadly, it was definitely the hypoallergenic food that was causing the upset because I did have a few goes at putting him back onto it, each time with disastrous results. And that was a real disappointment, to be honest, because up till then it had been the best his digestion has been since he's been with me, with the added bonus that he had lost all interest in eating the poop he was producing, which was a first, wasn't it? After a sudden change to different food and a limited reintroduction of proteins, things are a bit more settled now. We had lamb at one point. The charity sent lamb for him to try, and that was a total disaster. Within literally hours, he was in a really bad state, pooping like the world was ending that day, and he had to get all his poop out before it ended. So we will not be feeding anything lamb based again. I've established that he is okay to have things that contain beef, things that contain duck, things that contain fish, and we'll be sticking to those as the basis for his meals and his treats. It hasn't fixed his itchiness or his watery eyes, but it could mean one of two things. It could be that the things I've introduced back are the problem, or it could be that it wasn't dietary in the first place because these never really went away when he was on the restricted diet before we had the upset and had to come off it in a hurry. So, unfortunately, that isn't the end of his woes in relation to his skin. and also not the end of his woes in other ways. I can't remember if I told you before that he's been growing a skin tag on the inside of one knee for really quite a long time, maybe over a year now. I tried to get permission to have it removed about 9 months ago, but didn't find somewhere to do it at a price the charity would pay before we were in a position to be moving. And so I had to put that on hold. More recently, it's been growing again and bothering him in a big way. And our new vet has said it needed to come off now. This wasn't just a nicety, this was a necessity because it was ulcerating. And if you don't want to see a picture of it, look away now. Okay, it's gone. You can look back. Thankfully, our new vet was able to quote a price that the charity agreed to, and I booked the surgery for mid December. Now, for any other dog, it would have been 10 days with stitches and everything would have been fine, back to normal by the end of the year. Gandalf, however, is absolutely the worst patient you could imagine. For 2 weeks, we were going back almost every second day for checkups. I knew that it was not in an easy place on the inside of the knee. It's somewhere that's going to stretch, somewhere that's going to move every time he lays down, or even with every step that he takes. Within 2 days, the wound had opened up, the stitches had pulled. So he was in for a checkup and it was glued and it was stapled shut again. Within 2 days of that, the staples had pulled out and it was partly opened again. It was causing him a lot of discomfort, and as a result, he refused to lie down for hours at a time. At one point, one memorable point, we were awake with him crying till 5 in the morning because he would not lie down. I think what was happening was he'd try to lie down. He'd had a few goes at lying down. He'd get halfway down, he'd yelp and bounce back up again. And after he had tried and it had hurt a few times, he just refused to try anymore. And he would only stop crying if I was physically touching him, not just next to him, but my hand had to be sticking out and touching him. And that is not good news with a dog with bad sleep startle. I couldn't go upstairs even for long enough to brush my teeth unless he was already asleep at the time, as he either cried or he tried to chew the leg through what I was covering it with. I had asked for a cotton onesie to cover the wound, but instead the charity sent a fleece with really low cut legs that didn't cover it anyway, even if it had been a suitable fabric. And after the staples were put in, the vet kitted him out with a surgical suit, which helped protect the wound, but it came with other problems of its own because it was really difficult to keep it up and in the right place. I spent about 3 weeks hoiking this suit up to stop it sliding gradually down towards his back feet. And in the end, I had to tie it onto his harness to stop it slipping back. And it also made him really itchy, so he was irritable from that as well. For an extra layer of protection, I fitted him out with a pair of leggings that I found in a charity shop and cut up and modified and strapped them on over the top, tying them onto the back of a fleece. So it was a very Heath Robinson arrangement. Poor chap walking around with all that on is enough to put anyone in a bad mood. He was still determined to get at that leg day and night. The only way to stop him chewing at it, even through all the layers, was to watch him all the time. There was no way he was going to tolerate one of those big plastic collars. He wouldn't even tolerate a muzzle. And I tried an inflatable collar, but he would not even lie down with that on because he was too miserable wearing it. I think it was a bit too heavy around his neck, to be fair, and that was hurting him in different ways. As a result of all of this, he was really, really clingy. I couldn't sleep upstairs, and I was getting maybe a couple of hours a night on the sofa for several weeks, despite additional pain relief for him. And I had to keep him right next to the sofa with me because else he would growl or snap at the other dogs in the night. And he was also licking his paws frantically, which I suspect may have been because he was uncomfortable rather than because his paws hurt per se. After all of this, I was absolutely at my wits' end. Lack of sleep stops you being able to cope at the best of times, and I just could not function. It came to a head when he attacked me in the middle of one night. I remember very clearly. It was about 2:30 in the morning. He went for me with a vengeance, and I did not get a wink of sleep for the rest of that night. I couldn't move him away from the sofa because of him attacking the other dog, so we were just stuck. Luckily, we had an appointment already booked at the vet's the next day. If I'd had to wait for permission to get a vet trip, I really don't know how we would have coped. At that appointment, I was able to get additional increased pain relief for him. And the next night, we actually got 5 hours sleep, which seemed like an absolute miracle. However, the night after that, he woke up and launched himself at Floppy in the middle of the night. By the time we had dealt with that, I'd calmed everything down. I comforted poor Floppy, who was not expecting to be attacked while he was fast asleep. Again, not much sleep was had all round, and my nerves were absolutely shattered. As a result of all of this, I've had to resort to segregating them again all night until I can get the medication resolved with the vet, because I just can't risk any more attacks either on me or on my dogs. This is kind of how he was when he first came, when he was so anxious. Whether this is because he's anxious again or because it's pain or a combination of the two, I don't know. But we need some sort of intervention from the vet in order to try and get us back on the straight and narrow, because we cannot carry on as we are now. And having had a number of fairly calm years, it seems really frustrating to be back where we were all that time ago when he hadn't been with me long. We're still trying to resolve the tummy issue. It's much better than it was, but not fully resolved. So it may be that that also is contributing towards his problem. And to make matters worse, he is now back on normal food. He's eating poo again. So you cannot let him outside without supervision unless you want to be constantly chasing him around cleaning his mouth. So he really is a full-time job at the moment, aren't you? You are. You're trouble. Whatever happens next, I really hope we don't get another Christmas like this one has been. So that is where we are with Gandalf. That is all for today. We'll be back again soon and let you know how we get on. Bye for now.